So this is week 13, part 2, importing the data. So one of the first things we need to understand is this idea of proposals, which allow you to create different versions or options of your design. Now each option can be built on a previous proposal, or you can basically start from scratch. The only thing that really has to remain is the data from the original, or what's called the master proposal. So in the 2020 version, the proposals can be found in the top right of the program. What we're going to do is when you click on the name, whatever it is, you can then pick a different option as far as your proposals go. To create a new one, what you want to do is to select the proposal you want to start with, and that doesn't have to be the master proposal. If you've gone a certain way down and then you want to start splitting off from a certain direction that you're going, you can pick that proposal and then click the Add button afterwards and add a new one to it. Whenever you're giving the proposal a new name, understand that proposals in InfraWorks don't like the idea of spaces between the words, so you need to use something like an underscore if you want a space in the proposal name. The other thing you should remember is always avoid changing the master. Create a new proposal before you make any changes. There are two ways to add data to InfraWorks. So we can create from scratch in the program. So we can add trees and city furniture, we can create parcels, we can do all that in the program. Or we can also come in and add it as a file from another program. And we're going to do both in class. The data we add will be based on solid model files like FBX files and things like that, or surface files in Civil 3D. And it'll also be based on GIS files like shapefiles or SDF files. That's why it's crucial to make sure whenever you're designing in something like Civil 3D, you have your design geolocated so it's easy to drop into programs like InfraWorks. So here's what we're going to do first. Now that we've made our own copy of the base file, which you should have done in Part 1, Exercise 2, if you haven't, go back and do it. We're going to open it, we're going to select the master proposal, and then I'd like you to move through the different proposals. I have 3 different types. The initial site, which is the area that we've been working our project in, but I've added the highways. We're going to have a proposal 2, which is actually the small retail site that I had been talking about in the grading and all that example. And then we have a third one called retail site and school. Now in this one, we've actually added a lot more than that, but we brought in the surface for the school, we brought in the roads, the parcels, and things like that. What we're going to do is we're going to build off that one. So we're going to come in and click the Add button, create a new proposal, call it Week 4, or Proposal 4, Week 13, Part 2, whatever you want to call it, but create a new proposal based on that. And then we're going to come in and start changing some of the things. So right now, this is the master view, master proposal of the one file that we made a copy of to start off with. So now that we have this duplicate and we're messing around with this, we can come in and come over to master. And if we click on it, it lists all the ones that you can see. Now you'll notice it actually does it alphabetically. That's why I coded this in as 01, 02, 03 as a way to kind of watch as it proceeds through my design process. So the first thing I did was this 01, which was what I called the initial state. And if you look, I've added a highway, I've added the bypass, I've added in this major collector right here, which is Palmero Street. This is Tabor Road. This is North Country Trail. So I've added all those roads already in, as well as some over here. If you come over and look at the next one, so if I come up here and go to Site 2, and we'll wait as it updates, it takes a little while. There we go. We can come in and look at the site that we've added here. So if you look at this, I've added in my site, I added a building, I added a couple trees. Here's all my parking that we had before, handicap parking. If you look, you can actually see the curbs, so the surface has been updated and everything like that. So that is the retail site. Now, what we're going to be looking at and what we're going to build on today is going to be the school site. And so if I change this, what you'll notice is now on proposal 3, there's a lot more going on. So I've added in, here's my open sites. These are where I'm going to have my nice little retail, not retail, residential. Here's my retail. And then over here's my school. And if you look, I already added in the surface for the school. So you can see where the parking islands are and all that other stuff. So we're going to build off of that. I've also added in the tie-ins into the main road. And a lot of this we'll talk about next class, but I wanted to kind of get the general idea of how you can get started pretty quickly with your stuff. And so what I would do is I'd come up here. I'm going to start from the retail site in school. I'll click add and I'll go 04 and I'm just going to keep this short, exercise 01, and I'll hit OK. And so here's the proposal as far as it's set up. If you ever decide that you want to get rid of a certain proposal, and I didn't mention this in the notes, but if you come over to it, you can hit the little X button and that will get rid of that proposal. But I would really think about it before I started making a decision like that. So like I said before, our current proposal has the school parking lot surface already added into the InfraWorks file. In addition, I've already made a series of GIS files based on the Civil 3D site plan. And these represent things like parking lot, the islands, etc. When I bring them into InfraWorks, I'm going to layer them on top of each other to better define the site that I'm developing. I can then add details like trees and bushes to make it look even better. Right now, we will be covering how to add these into InfraWorks. Our next class, like I said, will be covering how I made the files because you'll want to be doing that for your site. But right now, we're just going to work on bringing them in correctly. All right, to make our surface look correct in InfraWorks, we need to use what's called coverage areas to define the parking lot from the curb or the earthwork grading. Think of this as kind of like dropping a sheet onto the ground. There might be a print on the sheet that you want to see, and so you set that down on the ground and it's going to fit to the ground. The next thing that you can do is put another smaller sheet on there and you'll be able to see that with the bigger sheet underneath and then the ground underneath that. And so there are a few rules we need to follow if we want this to work right. So if you want an area coverage, and this is like a closed area coverage, you need to make sure that you have closed polygons in Civil 3D. So that's one of the things. They got to be closed polygons. If you want an area, if you want to transfer just lines in coverage area, you've got to tell InfraWorks that they need to have a certain thickness or it won't show up. And so what that's called is a buffer. And so you'd add a buffer to that. Coverage areas stack on top of each other. So make sure that they are layered with the largest coverage area inserted first, and then proceed down from there until you get to the smallest area. You can adjust later. Let's say you mess up and you put one in and you've layered a bigger one on top of a smaller one. You can adjust it in the surface layers to clean that up. So we're going to use a couple different tools, like I said, to bring in our file. When you bring in outside files into InfraWorks, you're going to use data sources. And this can be found under, for lack of a better term, the I button. If you come over here and click this first button, which kind of looks like a broken Rubik's Cube, you can come over and data sources is right at the top. And so you can bring that in. Now this is in the 2020 version. If you get the 2021 version, it's going to be located slightly in a different place. And then if you look, here's all the files that you can bring in. And so if you look for our current proposal, I have ones, small retail foundation, small retail parking spaces, buildings, all that. Each of those are ones I already brought in for that as coverage areas for that part of the design. So we're going to bring in some new ones. And then you'll look down here. It isn't just coverage areas. I brought in these terrains, which included both of the grading for my small retail and the grading for my school, as well as I brought in a little bit higher definition surface to use in this design. So the other thing, like I said, is the surface layer button. And that can work two ways. One, you can actually bring in a layer and then decide you don't want to use it, but you don't want to get rid of it yet, in which case you can just click the light bulb and turn it off. It also allows you to reorder the layers by clicking on it and dragging it up and down. So that's how we can fix a problem if we put a bigger layer on top of a smaller one. You just drag the smaller one higher up in the stack and that'll work it out. So whenever you bring your files in, though, it's just a lot easier if you plan ahead, and then you're in pretty good shape to bring it in. So let's kind of talk about what we're going to be doing in our next exercise. So I have the files. They're all SDF files, and we'll talk about how to make those later, but those are like shape files. They're GIS files, and they shouldn't be zipped, but if you bring them in as a group, it might automatically zip all the files together and you'd have to extract them because it doesn't like zip files. And the way we're going to bring them in is pretty darn easy. We're just going to drag and drop them into our file. We don't have to position it or anything because the geolocation will find it. So we're just going to drag and drop. What we're going to bring in, with the exception of the buildings, each of the things will be a coverage area. We're going to bring them in the order shown. So we're going to bring in the parking lot, then the curbs, then the islands, and then the parking stripes. We're going to bring them in each as coverage areas. And then finally, under rules, under the rule style, you're going to have to click pencil, and then you can add the material to your rules. So sometimes people forget that step. We're going to go ahead and bring that. And then what we're going to do for the building is we're going to drop that in, and it's just a shape file as well, an SDF file as well. And we're going to, instead of use coverage areas, we're going to use buildings, and there's a couple other steps that are going to be involved. But I'll show that in the demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to pull these over here. This is the files that I have, the different GIS files, and so the first thing we're going to bring in is the school parking lot. So if I drag that in, I can drag it in, put it anywhere here, and just let go. And it's going to come up. I'm going to get this. I want to set, first thing is the type, so I'm going to go set that as a coverage area. Once I do, it's going to give me an option right here. It'll say rule styles, so I'll click on it. And then I'm going to go under materials, and I can pick a couple things here. So I could pick like this dark concrete if I wanted, or like a gray asphalt or medium gray. It really doesn't make a difference. I'll add that in, and I'll hit close and refresh, and it'll come in. That is something I do want to point out. I did click close and refresh. If you just hit OK, it won't show this thing. It's not going to add it in. You have to refresh it for it to show up. So let me show you again. So I'll come in now that I have the parking area. Let's go ahead. I'm going to add in the parking curb. So I'm going to just drag that one in. Same sort of thing, coverage area. Then I'll come over here, material, parking area. Let's do this one, light gray, close and refresh. Good. All right, let me add the next in, and then I'll talk in a bit. Now, in this case, I'm bringing the parking stripes. Those are not closed polygons that were made SDF files. Those are actually individual lines that were made SDF files. So when I go to color, I'm going to go ahead and just make it a white color. But if I hit OK right now, if I hit close and refresh, it's going to show up, or it's going to come in, but you're not going to see it because they're basically infinitely thin lines. So I need to make them thicker. Where I'm going to find that is under Table. If I click on Table and I come down here, there's Buffer. It's right under Coverage. It's Buffer, and I'm going to set that at 0.25. I'm going to hit close and refresh, and all of those lines are going to come in. So now I have those lines. If I come in and select them later, so if I come over here and select Feature, here's the buffer right here, and I can actually change it here as well. But you normally have to go to that table to get it the first time. All right, so I have that in. Let me come in, and I want to add in the building. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. I'm going to come in, I'm going to drop it in the exact same way, and so it's called School Buildings. So I'm going to drop it in, and it's going to come up, and instead of hitting Coverage Area, I'm going to pick Buildings. And then under Rule Style, I can just pick a style. So I'll pick this one. It looks kind of cool. Actually, that looks more like a school, doesn't it? So I'll go ahead and hit that. I'll hit Close and Refresh. Oops. No, I won't. Before I hit Close and Refresh, I need to come over here to Source, because buildings need to have an elevation attached to them. All the others are just dropping down on the surface. That's why I didn't have to do this step. But buildings, you need to tell it what the elevation is, or tell it to drape. And so if I click here on Source, and I come over here and say Drape, and hit Close and Refresh, it's going to drape those buildings on there. Now, if you look, the buildings are set at 33 feet. I want them at 20 feet. So I'll hit Close and Refresh. If you select them, you can also add unique roof materials. So I can come in, like this is Spanish tile, and if I actually wanted to have a raised roof, I can come in here and add like a slope of, 25 degrees. And as long as it's not too weird of a shape, it'll actually give you a nice little roof. And so once again, come in here and select, and here we go. So now I have all my buildings in here. Just dragging and dropping, making a coverage area, all except for the buildings, which was slightly different, but I showed you how to do that. Now that we have our base design, I want to add some more details. And so if I click on the Edit button to the left of the I command, it basically looks like a little pencil. It's going to give me a lot of things that I can add directly from InfraWorks as opposed to have to bring in a file. What I want to do is I want to add some cars and some trees and some other stuff to kind of better define this. Well, the cars and everything is what's found under what's called city furniture. And that I can actually add trees as well, but like benches, there are buildings in city furniture, light poles, there's just a bunch of stuff you can add, people, cars. And whenever you want to place those objects, if you double click on a position, it will place that object on that position, a single object. If you want to create like a line of objects, what you'll do is you'll click, it'll set the first point, and then you keep clicking until you're finished. And the last point, you double click. That will bring up a series of them along that line. You'll also get a slider. That slider is going to determine how you can increase or decrease the density of the objects on that line. These are 3D models, so if I went online and decided I wanted to grab a dragon from Skyrim because it was an FBX file, I could grab that, bring it into InfraWorks, and it'll upload it and all that. So you can bring outside sources in as files. Trees are going to work the exact same way. Like I said, you can actually build those in city furniture, but they actually have some separate options specifically to use with trees that'll help you a little bit more. And so like you can create a stand of trees, you can do a line of trees, things like that. Just things that kind of make it easier to do landscaping. And once again, you'll end up with a slide bar, and as you adjust that slide bar, it will increase or decrease the density in the area that you picked. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to add in some cars, I'm going to add in some trees, and show you how to do that. This is actually kind of the fun part, and it's unique to each person. And so I'll kind of show you how to do that right now. All right, let's have a little fun with this. I'm going to come over. It's right here under the Build, Manage, and Analyze, or the I button. And then we're going to do Edit. And so that's the pencil right here. And so I'm going to click on it. You can bring in all sorts of things, buildings, barriers, things like that. I want city furniture, so I'm going to click on that. And then I can come in and pick whatever I want. Right now it has some cars up there, but if I want to look for vehicles, if I just type in VEH, it's going to start finding all the vehicles that are stored in here. And so I'm going to add a Volvo. And so let me add a Volvo into this parking spot. So I'll just double click there, select it. Oh, I have to hit escape. And now I have controls. So if I click on one of these corner things, I can rotate it. Except I don't know why he would back his thing into a handicap spot, but there we go. I can move it to another spot, control that way. So that's how to use that. If I go into city furniture and let's go the bus, I can do the same thing with the bus. Let's just park that right here, hit escape, come over and add the bus sitting in front of school. If you want to, so let's say like you have one and you want to put in another one. If you have something selected and you do Control D, that's kind of like copying and pasting kind of all in the same step. So it's going to copy it, and then you can place the next one. You still have to double click to land it, and then you can come in and park it like that. Let's see. If I go over, let's go city furniture. And if I type in, I think it's people. Yep. I can come in and let's grab some people here. I'm going to put some people right here. So I'm going to double click and place them. By the way, you see it has lighting and I got cool shadows on this. Let me make a line of people. So I'm going to go into city furniture again. And I'm just going to pick a walking man in a brown suit. And I'm going to click here, and then I'll double click up here, and it puts in, right now, it puts in 2 people where I place those. If I hit escape once, it's going to give me this little density marker, and if I increase that, it's going to increase the amount of people that, and unfortunately it's all the same people, but I'll show you how to work that out. So let's just make a lot of people. They're all walking. And if I want to select this as the group line again, what I'll do is I'll select one of the people and then just click on it again, and I get that density meter. If, however, I come over and I just select one and I want to change it, I can come up here to the style and just pick another person. So let's see, maybe I'll have a standing woman. So right here, and then come over here and add another style. Let's go I got some weird standing man, a walking man. And so you can come in and kind of change up these things along the way. You can even delete one out by just selecting and hit delete, and that'll delete it out of the stack. And then what's cool though is if you adjust, you can redo all of your things. So that's how you can create stuff like that. Let's do a set of trees. Let me show you something too. Sometimes, see, so like I want to delete the whole group and it's not letting me. Here's what you can do. If you come over here to where you have your view, and it either is going to say conceptual or engineering. If you come over here to this little cog, click on it. Under the second, it looks like a little Q, you have edit mode. And if you turn that off, what that'll allow you to do is then right click and delete out something, and then you can just turn it back on. It's a weird thing, transition thing that they did in this program, but they added that in, and so that's how you can delete group things if it doesn't want to delete. So let's add a stand of trees right here. And actually, I'm going to add the stand of trees over here. So I'm going to come over here, and where it says stand of trees, I'm going to come in, and I'll pick a tree. I guess this one. And then I'm just going to kind of click and make a little stand of trees. And it's kind of up to you how you shape this out. When you get to where you're happy, double click, and it's going to do the exact same thing the other one did. It's going to put a stand of trees in there. Boy, that's a big tree. Let me change that. I'm going to change that to beech trees. There we go. If I hit escape once, I get my density meter, so I can make it more or less dense. And then you can do the exact same thing with a row of trees. So I can come over here and say, okay, I want trees along this right here. And right now they're horrible looking hedges, but I can come in and maybe let's try to find something a little more kind of decorative. There we go. If you hit escape and you grab this grip, so I can make them taller and I can make them shorter, things like that. And then when you're done, just hit escape. And there you go. So have some fun with that. There's a lot of things you can add in, a lot of different cars and people and things like that, and kind of dress this up a little in your proposal. Okay, now that we've kind of figured out how we can bring in this different stuff, we're going to talk about in our next set of videos coming up later in the week, how to get it out of Civil 3D in those files that make it real easy to drop into InfraWorks and create a design like this. So we'll be looking forward to that in the next set of videos.